Thank you for watching Crowd Control Hunting, all things outdoors.
Hey guys, this is Spencer Jordan with Crowd Control Hunting, all things outdoors, crowdcontrolhunting.com. And this is our first podcast. I'm here with my friend
Evan Gilliland, and it's great to be here, Spencer.
And so Evan is a hunting buddy of mine, and we wanted to record something and get something out there. And while we're at it, and while I'm talking about this, let us know what you think about the idea of doing a podcast. By the time this actually airs, this might be something in action, but we are looking at potentially getting a blog started up, maybe doing some weekly vlogs, and that sort of thing, just trying to put out more content. So let us know what you think of that. But Evan, tell them a bit about yourself. Tell them about where you're from.
Well, okay, I guess we'll just start back to where home is for me, and that's up in northeastern Indiana. I kind of live up in the corner by Michigan and Ohio. And so I live in a pretty rural area. We've got not a whole lot of people in the area, but I
think people would like to hear about maybe what the hunting's like up there. And
that's what I was getting to. We've got a lot of wildlife. We've got a lot of open space, and particularly where I'm at, we've got about a 2-mile block of woods.
Wow.
And my family owns about 160 acres of it, and I have free range on hunting any of that. And I got a couple cousins that hunt up in there too. It's a great place. We got big bucks. We got just a lot of deer. Our numbers are high. Anyway, so I've been hunting since I was young. I started when I was 9 or 10, going out with my dad. Started actually hunting on my own when I was 11 or 12. So it's been a part of my life growing up. I've seen my dad kill a lot of bucks, and my family's always been out in the woods doing this. So it's just been kind of natural for me. And for me growing up around it, I wanted to kill something. So I'd taken a couple does when I was younger, but I set early on in my hunting career that I wanted to kill a large buck for my first one.
Now let's talk about that. Evan waited, how many years was it?
I waited 10 years.
Waited 10 years to kill his first buck. Now, some of you guys are going to think that's crazy, but Evan, why don't you go ahead and tell them? And if you guys haven't seen it, go to our Instagram at Crowd Control Hunting and look for this picture of Evan's monster buck. Go ahead and tell them a little bit about that experience.
So like I said, it's been 10 years that I've been hunting. I've taken a shot at one mature buck before this. We weren't able to find him. We lost the blood trail. That was very frustrating as an 8th grader. It nearly made me want to quit. I had already waited about 5 years at that point to even take a shot at a buck. Anyway, so I waited about another 5 until what I felt was a trophy buck came by. And I don't know if you want me to get into the story quite yet of it, or
well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. Tell them a little bit of the story, and tell them you got the buck measured up, and so tell them.
Yeah, I had him officially measured.
What that scored, and
he officially measured 164 inches gross.
Wow.
And after deductions was 158, so he'll be in the record books, which I was very proud of.
Very cool.
Anyway, so I'll just kind of start with I was a freshman at Purdue last year, and I had an event going on the night before opening day. So, and it went on until 12 o'clock. I wasn't able to leave Purdue University until 12 o'clock, which is about a 3-hour drive from my house.
Right.
So I drive through the night, about fell asleep, and ended up getting home.
The things you do for hunting.
I know. I know. And I knew that we had some good bucks on trail cam that year, and the stand I'd been going to, I'd seen a lot of mature bucks come through there, hadn't had the opportunity to take a shot, so I knew where I was going was going to be a good place. Anyway, I got home at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I decided I wasn't going to go to sleep because I knew if I went to sleep, I might not wake up. So I ended up getting a shower and packing up and getting ready.
Let's restate, might not wake up in time for hunting.
Well, I mean, when you're a college student, you don't sleep a lot in general, so when you fall asleep, you stay asleep.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I decided I was just going to stay up throughout the rest of the early morning, and I got all my stuff ready, and I decided I was going to hike out early, get out before anybody else. So I left my house at about 4:45, got out to the stand at about 5:20. When I got to the stand, this tree had been dead for about 2 years, and our straps were starting to wear, and it was kind of risky. I wasn't really sure if I was going to be able to stay in that stand. Anyway, so I get out to the tree, and it's the tree's in the worst shape it's ever been in. And I hooked up my gun to the rope and then started climbing up the tree, and it was swaying like crazy, and there's no wind. It was just me, and it's cracking and creaking.
Now let's go ahead and assume this was your last time hunting that
It
particular
is.
stand.
Yep, we took it down
Okay.
after season. No, it's about 25 feet up, so it's a death trap.
Wow. 25 feet.
It was a death trap, but it was the best stand that I had. I knew that if I was going to get a chance at a good one, it was going to be there. Anyway, so I go up. It's actually a double ladder stand, and not a double ladder stand, a double stand up there.
Buddy stand.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and we've got one of them positioned higher than the other. My dad and I actually used to hunt it together a lot. Anyway, I would always sit up in the top one, but it was creaking and cracking so much I didn't feel comfortable. So I sat in the lower one and just waited, watched the other hunters come in, watched my cousins come in, just to kind of see where they were going. I knew, kind of if they'd be spooking any deer my way or whatnot. And sat there on my phone and tried to keep awake, try to keep warm. It's a pretty cool morning. Anyway, where our block of woods is, I'm used to seeing 20, 30, 40 deer on opening morning. That's a typical
You're making the
opening
rest of
morning
us
for
pretty
us.
jealous.
And I know it's not that case a lot of places in Indiana, but the people that do hunt our block are all trophy hunters, all experienced hunters. So, which is actually the whole reason I wanted to wait and get one, is because I wanted to be proud of my first buck. I eventually sat there till the sun came up and was expecting to see deer pretty much right away. I had one come through real early. I'll kind of explain the terrain that I'm sitting in. It's a real thick. I'm sitting on the edge of a thicket and on the edge of a wood line.
Okay.
And there's a ridge just inside the wood line that these bucks like to travel. And anyway, so I'm sitting up in this dead tree. I've got the thicket out to my left, and I've got the wood line on my right. And I've got a stream that runs right next to my tree. So it's a good place to be able. It's pretty open. You can see about 600 yards up to the road.
Wow.
Where there's a field about 200 yards up in front of where I'm sitting, and then behind me it goes for about a mile. So it's a pretty good location. You see does come in from every direction. You see bucks come in from almost any direction. Anyway, so that just kind of gives you the general layout of what I'm looking for.
Now, I'm just interested. How was the wind blowing this particular day?
It was a very still morning. I remember none of the trees were moving except for mine, because every time I'd shift my weight, that tree would shake like crazy.
That's a problem.
I know. I was trying to be as still as I could that morning, making sure I wasn't shifting my weight even, because my tree was moving so much. But anyway, sun came up. I had one come through pretty early before I could really tell what it was, and I had a couple does come through up on the edge of the field about 200 yards away. And, opening morning, I'm not looking to shoot does anyway. I was just looking to see if there are any bucks following. Nothing. It came around about 8:30, and I was, the thought had just crossed my mind. I was like, man, this is a slow morning for opening morning. I'm used to seeing all kinds of deer, and it just hadn't been what I was used to. I'd seen, I think, 5 at that point. And then I had heard something back to about my 5 o'clock. So I stood up. I knew it was some deer coming, either some deer or a squirrel. coming through.
Squirrels. Don't you love? Let's hold on. Let's pause on the story and talk about the hunter's worst enemy,
A squirrel.
the squirrel. I cannot tell you how many times in my hunting experience that I have mistook a squirrel for a massive monster 180 walking in the woods behind me.
They sound like 300-pound animals. They really do.
I've sent a few texts before that said buck back to the left, and come to find out it was a squirrel. And so let's. I think that's a common problem. But back to
yeah.
back to your
Anyway,
story.
so I'd heard something about my 5 o'clock. I figured it was some deer making their way up to the field. There's a lake about half mile behind me. It's actually to the south of me, and the bucks and does like to bed along the edge of that lake, and then they'll come along this ridge line out to the field. So figured that's what was going on.
Now, was the field? I forget what time of year you said this was.
It was opening
planted,
day,
or
so
was it?
it's November
Okay.
14th.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's an alfalfa field.
Okay.
They'll come in. We don't have a whole lot of corn, particularly right on my block. We do across the road from us, but they'll come out to that alfalfa.
And I've heard great
early
things about
morning.
alfalfa.
Oh yeah, it's
Guys, if you have recommendations, food plots is always something very interesting. It's interesting to see how deer respond to different types of food in different areas. So I want you guys to take a moment, and if you've not connected with us online, I want you to go to crowdcontrolhunting.com. I want you to scroll down to the bottom, and I want you to contact us and give us maybe tell us your stories and give us some advice about what you use in your fields and what type of food that you like to implement. Anyway, back to the story.
okay.
Evan.
Yeah. Anyway, so these deer like to travel along this ridge line in between the lake where they bed down and the alfalfa field. And I figured that's what was happening. There's probably a group of does coming along. Hopefully they had a buck trailing. So I stand up. My tree's shaking like crazy. I'm hoping that it slows down by the time they come up into where I can see them. Because once you get into that timber line, you can't really see very far. It's about 30 yards is all you can see. Anyway, so I'd see a doe with her 2 yearlings trailing her coming up. I'm sitting there with my gun leaning up against the tree, just watching them, just enjoying the morning. I'm not a hunter that likes to kill everything that walks by. I mean, I waited 10 years for a buck. So I was
But
sitting.
quite the buck. Quite the dreamer.
And another thing I want to comment, it's not that there was any lack of me being in the woods, and that's
Right.
why I
And you
didn't
were
kill anything
seeing
for 10
deer.
years.
I mean,
Oh
you've
man,
told me.
I see. If you don't see 10 deer every time you go out, it's a disappointment in my
Right.
house.
Right.
So and I just love to go out there and observe them. I love to.
Mind you, that takes some dedication, and some of you trophy hunters, you know, the dedication in going in the woods and being willing to pass up great mature bucks simply because you want to beat last year's record.
Oh, yeah.
Is a pretty incredible feat. I can't tell you how many times it's easy to get trigger happy. We call it buck fever when a buck walks out and you wanna shoot. You rise up and you get your sights on them, and it's almost normal to want to pull the trigger.
Yeah, it's
but
almost like a natural.
that's a weight, man.
Yeah.
That is a weight.
And I heard somebody talking the other day about how, whether they had the killer instinct or not, and some people just, the way they look at hunting is a little bit different. I just like to be out there in nature. Not
Sure.
saying that I won't kill a deer or that, I love killing deer. That's the biggest rush that there is. I love being able to experience that it's really a special connection that you're able to do with nature, and there's not many opportunities other than killing a deer that you can have. Anyway, so I'm sitting there enjoying these does, and they're just kind of just walking in a line up to the field, and I notice the mature doe up front stops and looks back, and I think, uh-oh, it might either be another group of does coming, or
always a good
maybe there's a
feeling.
buck. And so I'm sitting there, and my gun's just leaning up against the tree. I'm not even holding it or nothing. I wasn't expecting. And I look back to where she's looking at, and all I see is a wall of white. And my heart sunk. I thought, oh my goodness, here comes 10 years of waiting, and it's finally here. And so I watch him walk up, and I think, oh my word, I don't have my gun.
Now,
if I
prior
move a
to
little
this,
bit.
had you guys ever caught this on trail camera?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my cousins manage our trail cameras. I don't have any out there.
Okay.
I hadn't bought any myself. But anyway, and yeah, they'd had this buck on trail camera all summer. We knew there was 3 mature 150-inch plus bucks on our property. One was a 9-point, one was a 11. He had an extra sticker. That's actually one that killed. So he ended up being a 12-point, and then the other was actually a 16. He was the smallest of the 3, though. He just had a lot of points. Anyway, so we knew that there had been some mature bucks. So this wasn't a complete surprise to me by any means. So I see this buck. I see the wall of white, and I reach down to grab my gun. I try to control my breath. And
What's going through your head at that point?
oh my word, here's the deer I've been waiting for. That's what's going through my head is these last 10 years of me, no, I'm going to wait. No, I'm going to wait. No, I'm going to wait. And this is what I've been waiting for. This
You've been
is
grinding
the
for 10
moment.
years. For
Exactly.
This moment.
I have sat in the, I bet I sat in the tree stand 100 times. 100, 200 times and just sitting there and seen and passed up 50 nice first bucks.
Right.
Just so I could have that opportunity to kill a big deer. And here he is. I knew he was big, couldn't really tell how big. My mind's racing to the point where I'm not really paying attention to the details. I just know it's a big deer. And anyway, so I pick up my gun. Of course, the tree's going crazy. I'm afraid he's going to see me. He's about 40 yards at this point. I'm about 10 yards outside of the timber line. He's about 30 within the timber line. And anyway, so I'm waiting for him to come into a clearing. It's pretty thick with trees. He steps into a shooting lane. I grunt to get him to stop. He didn't stop. He was focused on that doe. Took a couple more steps. He got into another shooting lane. I grunted for him to stop. I'm looking through the scope. He looks up at me, and by this point, it's been about a minute and a half that I've seen him. So this all happened fairly quickly.
Right.
But I'm shaking like crazy.
Back to that buck fever.
Oh man, that buck fever. And the way it hits me is it gives me like my voice gets all trembly, and then my hands shake and my legs shake, and I don't think real clearly, and words can't come, and and that's the point I'm at.
Well, hopefully, at this point, all you have to worry about is pulling the trigger.
Oh, that's all I'm focusing on. But my at this point, I'm at the full extent of buck fever. He's looking up at me. I've got him in the sights. He's about 35 yards, and
that's it.
That's it. I let go, and I drilled him. I seen him run up into the woods about another 50 yards and look back at me. And at that point, when he stopped and looked back at me, I thought, oh, my word, because I had seen it hit him. I knew that he had jumped. I knew that he had been affected by the shot. But when he just stopped and looked back at me, I thought, oh, no. I thought, you have got to be kidding me. This is the opportunity of a lifetime probably. And I just missed. I can't believe I just missed. And so I start freaking out, loading up another shell, and I'm getting ready to shoot again, and he walks off. And I thought, well, and he walks out of sight. And I thought, oh, well, I either hit him or I didn't. And my cousin was hunting about 75, 80 yards from me, and he'd shot me a text. And he shot me a text and just wanted to find out what had happened. And the only thing, my hands were shaking so bad. I remember I was afraid I was going to drop my phone. I thought I was going to fall out of the tree stand. Anyway, all I could get out was monster. That's all I said. I just said monster. And he said, okay, I'll be over there soon. And I watched him get out of the tree, and I sat there. I like to take my time whenever I shoot a doe or whatever. And I take my time and let him bleed out, let him die, in peace, and then walk up on him. And And anyway, so I sit there for about 20 minutes, and I couldn't take it anymore. I got ready, and I got down. And my cousin had come over to the tree, and we tracked his blood, and we found him. And it's funny. I thought I had come across a case of ground shrinkage. I walk up to him, and he's laying away from me. And I'm like, oh, man, he's not as big as I thought he was. And then I get up there and up to the front of him, and I thought, holy smokes, this dude is a lot bigger than I thought he was. So it's kind of a funny, funny case of me walking up to him and not realizing what I had actually shot. And we drug him out, and I got pictures, and
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
You
Exactly.
killed a monster
yeah.
buck. And for those of you that might be tuning in late, 10 years of waiting. That is dedication. 10 years of waiting, and finally he killed this monster buck. Now, you said, how many points was it?
He was 12.
He was 12.
He was a typical
time?
10, and then he had 2 kickers, but they were in the same spot on both sides.
Okay. Amazing buck.
Yeah.
Again, if you haven't seen it, go to our Instagram account, and you can find it. This is Evan we are talking to, so just scroll down, and you'll find the picture, and I believe Evan is tagged in it.
Mm-hmm.
Evan, what's your username on Instagram in case anybody wants to connect with you?
It's Evan Gilliland, and I'll spell that last name. It's just Gilliland. I know it's a confusing one, so I figured I'd put that out there. Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you for listening. Evan, is there anything that you'd like to say maybe before we close this podcast?
Just gonna say thank you so much for letting me have this opportunity, and talking to the listeners out there. If you've got something interesting, shoot them an email.
Thin them this year.
Exactly. Yeah, thin them. And once you get those exciting stories, shoot them an email, shoot them pictures. I know they're gonna love to see that.
Absolutely. We love to share photos. We love to see what even if it's what you've got on a trail cam. Maybe you haven't gotten to that point yet where you've had this opportunity. Maybe you've been tracking a particular buck. Send us the photos. We want to see what's going on in your world of hunting. So I'm Spencer Jordan.
And I'm Evan Gilliland.
And this is Crowd Control Hunting. Hey guys, we are back. This is Spencer Jordan with Crowd Control Hunting. And I'm sitting here with a friend of mine, Evan Gilliland. And Evan recently shared a story with us about an incredible hunting journey. He waited 10 years to kill his first buck, and it was a monster to say the least. If you haven't seen the photo, go to our Instagram account, Crowd Control Hunting on Instagram. You can see that photo, just an incredible buck. But Evan and I wanted to share some of our greatest hunting stories, funny things in the tree stand and in the duck blind, as well as talk about some failures hunting, some of the greatest disappointments. I'm sure there's none of us that are a stranger to disappointments in the tree stand. So, Evan, why don't you start off and just tell us, you were telling me a story earlier about being in 8th grade, and so go ahead and tell us that hunting story.
And yeah, I just want to thank you so much for having me back. Anyway, so it was a very similar situation if you listen to the podcast of me talking about my first buck that I killed. And it was actually a very similar situation. It happened about 4 years before, about 5 years, sorry. And I had this buck in at about 10 yards. I shot him, hit him high on the lungs. We took his blood trail about 500 yards and then lost it completely. We searched for hours upon hours, and looked for actually a couple weeks over a couple different times over a couple weeks. Never were able to find anything. I did eventually hear about a month later of somebody finding my buck. He had been eaten.
Man.
Yeah, he'd been
And
eaten.
that's
up
always,
and,
it's disappointing because you lose so much great meat.
Yeah.
And
I didn't only lose the meat at this point. The people that ended up finding him wouldn't believe me that it was the same deer I had shot. So I didn't even get to keep the antlers. So
Some of you guys listening might have some similar stories to that.
I'm sure.
It's
Oh,
always
yeah.
a great disappointment. And honestly, it almost ruins your season because you're not going to go back and kill another buck.
No.
That would be, first of all, wrong, and second of all, illegal.
Yeah.
At least here in Indiana, I'm not sure of other laws in other states. But it's disappointing because you have years that go into the genetics and the build of a great buck, and then it's gone.
Exactly, and you don't even get to experience the rewarding.
Right.
It's about like having a massive buck get hit by a car or something.
Now, I want to share maybe a story a little more on the funny side of hunting. For those of you that are waterfowl hunters, I was in a duck blind with my father and my brothers, Philip Gentry and Dylan Jordan. Some of you may know them from social media and from some of our films.
And if you do, you know Dylan.
And if you do, you know Dylan. But this was a long time ago. We were very young, and we had just been waterfowl hunting a handful of times with our dad. And it's something that he had done and he had gotten into, but we were just starting to kind of get into it. And during this probably year of Dylan's life and all seasons, Dylan had a fear of pulling the trigger. Some of you might be able to
surprise me.
relate when you were young. And there was this particular day, we were just having incredible luck. We were on a great spot for Indiana. It was no Arkansas or Kansas, but we had just it was a great spot. It was public land, and Dylan would not pull the trigger. And I remember my dad just very sternly saying, "Dylan, if you want to kill something today, you have to pull the trigger." And after it had happened several times, my dad finally got mad enough at Dylan simply because he didn't want Dylan to ruin his hunting experience. He wanted him to have a good. I mean, we had a great spot. It was going to be a great day for everybody. And finally, lo and behold, a large group of blackbirds. And they were flying in front of us, and my dad said, "Dylan, I want you to rise up and shoot those blackbirds." And of course, Dylan is, "What are you talking about?" And they're getting closer, and finally, my dad, he just thin him, and so Dylan, he fires off and managed to kill a couple of blackbirds. And come to find out, the whole purpose of my dad doing that, and maybe the teaching behind it, was he wanted to make sure that there wasn't a little bit of trigger fear going on.
Oh yeah.
And so that was probably one of our funnier hunting experiences as a family. The time that Dylan killed 3 blackbirds in a duck blind. I don't think it gets any funnier than that. I say that. I'm sure some of you have some incredible hunting stories,
sure.
and we want to talk about them. If you have a funny hunting story that you'd like to share with us, I want you to go to our website, crowdcontrolhunting.com, and you can either just submit the normal contact form at the bottom of the page, or you can go to each of us individually and contact one of us individually. But we want to know your funniest hunting story, and we want to share them on air here on the Crowd Control Hunting Podcast.
That would be great.
Make sure to do that, crowdcontrolhunting.com. So anyway, this has been a great podcast, and it's very exciting to have my friend Evan here. Evan he's a buddy of mine, and he has been of great assistance and shooting some hunting videos. He is actually going to be helping me do some filming this bow season, and just a great guy. So make sure find the picture. If you were listening earlier, find the picture on our Instagram at Crowd Control Hunting of his incredible buck. And if you happen to just walk into the room, I want you to rewind this, and I want you to go back and listen to his story. So anyway, I'm Spencer,
And I'm Evan Gilliland.
and this is Crowd Control Hunting.